bad boy, my recipe?
Tenochtitlan.
We're here at the Bodleian Library at Oxford University, looking at a work on paper dating all the way back to 1535 to 1550.
Yes, this painted manuscript was one of the most elaborate paintings, and actually that covered the Codex Mendoza, a collection of 71 folios that record information about the Aztec Empire, such as imperial tribute lists, royal history, and practices of daily Aztec life, completed on Spanish pages and binding on spine, similar to European books of that time period.
Although the book records information about Aztec life, I, along with many art historians, conclude that this particular codex was created with the intent to justify the colonization of these peoples to citizens back in Europe.
Something to remember is that the Aztec people weren't originally called the Aztecs. They were known as the Mexica people. When the Spanish conquistador, Hernando Cortez, stumbled across this civilization, they ruled much of the land that today composes Mexico.
Yes, in fact, the name Mexico is taken from the Mexica people who previously inhabited it.
It's remarkable to note that the Mexica people were nomadic people originally from Aztlán, to the far north of the Valley of Mexico just 400 years earlier.
As you can infer, the term Aztec comes from the original mythical homeland of the Mexica people, Aztlán.
In the 13th century, the Mexica arrived in the Valley of Mexico, where they began to settle on an island in Lake Texcoco.
The legend goes that the early Mexica people saw an eagle perched on a prickly pear cactus growing out of a stone.
They took this as a sign of the end of their wandering by their god.
They named their settlement Tenochtitlan, and soon in the 15th century, the Mexica people formed a triple alliance with neighboring civilizations and began an aggressive campaign of expansion.
Yes, and this campaign expansion led to the development of the glorious Aztec Empire as we know it today, with the Tenochtitlan as a crown jewel.
The Codex is a beautiful and ornate example of the Nahua art of painting and writing.
It was commissioned by the first viceroy of New Spain, Antonio de Mendoza, in 1541 with the intention of it being sent to Emperor Charles V of Spain, but never made it due to the acquisition of the Codex by French pirates. As a result, it came into the hands of André Thevet, cosmographer of King Henry II of France, who included his name on various pages, including the top left of the frontispiece we are looking at today.
When looking at this piece for the first time, it's easy to be struck immediately by the bold color choices and dramatic geometric stylization of the work, and its figures that almost remind me of the depiction of animals and the beaker of ibex motifs.
Absolutely, especially this eagle found in the middle of the schematic diagram of the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan, which is divided into 4 quarters, mirroring the organization of the universe along with the alignment of the cardinal directions.
These bright turquoise blue rectangles dividing these sections symbolize the canal system that ran through the city, showing a sort of similarity to the canal system found in the city of Venice in Italy.
The eagle in the center calls back to an Aztec myth, describing a patron deity's call for Aztec ancestors to leave their home in Aztlán and look for a place where they see an eagle upon a cactus growing from the rock. They found this iconography in the center of a lake on an island, which they would soon establish as their capital.
Speaking of the eagle, the structure that can be found above it in the composition symbolizes an early phase of the Aztecs' main temple, the Templo Mayor, found in the heart of the city. And if we continue analyzing the items found inside of this diagram, we can see many types of plants scattered around the composition.
Yes, the assortment of these plants allude to a sort of agricultural fertility associated with the city.
To the right of the eagle, there seems to be a skull strung onto a wooden bar.
This was actually a common practice in the Aztec community. The structure is called a zonpatli and was used to display a human skull, usually from a war captive or sacrifice victim.
As we keep studying this work's content, our eyes can't help but be drawn to the 10 seemingly male figures in the quadrants, depicted wearing white garments and top knots in their hair. The unique stylization of the figures, along with the accompanying glyphs, draw similarities to the Egyptian work, Akhenaton, Nefertiti, and their 3 daughters.
These are actually the men who led the Aztecs to this island location, identified by the name through symbolic glyphs that match each figure by a thin black line. In fact, this technique of identification was very common and prevalent practice in most pre-conquest manuscripts.
Although our eyes can be captivated by these figures as a whole, one specific figure found to the left sticks out especially. exhibiting a different complexion and different qualities in comparison to everyone else.
Although the gray color of this figure looks very much like an unusual skin complexion, I actually believe that this looks this way as a result of covering himself in ash. This was a common symbol of worship for the Aztec people, also evident through the depiction of red around the figure's ears.
This red around the ear most likely identifies him as a priest, as blood was used as a common offering to the Aztec gods. His priesthood is also supported by the scroll coming from his mouth and the woven mat he is depicted sitting on, conveying high status.
Yes, in fact, this figure is identified as Tenoch, a priest who died in 1363, leading to the first Aztec speaker elected in 1375 by a council of elders.
I want to touch on the temporal frame that surrounds this frontispiece, serving as a thick, bold border for this composition.
The border shows 153-year glyphs marked around the page going in a clockwise fashion.
In the bottom right of the page, the marking of the year 2 read is emphasized with a cord wound around it and a fire drill above. This is when the ritual and civil cycles of the Aztec calendar align. Since this only happens every 52 years, it was celebrated with the new fire ceremony.
Like many other Aztec traditions, fire was a big part of this ritual. The Aztec leaders drilled new fire into the body of a sacrifice before the fire was distributed around the community. The fire from this ceremony would light the homes in all the village.
The day on which the sacrifice would occur was determined by the sun. The Aztecs kept track of the days using stones and would place the stone on the altar that the ritual took place on. One of these sunstones was recovered in the Templo Mayor and is now possibly the most famous examples of Mexica sculpture.
Finally, below the diagram of the city, the artist depicts scenes of conquest, emphasizing the Aztecs' military power by depicting 2 soldiers in a hierarchical scale, towering over 2 men in defeat.
These defeated men can be identified through their place glyphs, showing that they both hail from locations near Lake Texcoco.
Similarly, the Aztec warriors can be identified by the shields they are using, which can be also found underneath the central eagle, as well as their obsidian-bladed weapons called macanas.
It's important to remember the indigenous ethnicity of the artist, along with the Spanish annotation of the images by a priest that spoke Nahuatl, a language spoke by Nahuas, an ethnic group that the Aztecs belonged in. Beaker of ibex motifs.
Absolutely, especially this eagle found in the middle of the schematic diagram of the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan, which is...
The way they spell
It was the way that I remember it best, if I wrote down lawn like that.
No, the way you did it.
How else do you write that pronunciation?
It's 10 och teach lawn.
God bless America. Absolutely, especially this eagle found in the middle of the schematic diagram of the Aztec capital.
Tenochtitlan.
Tenochtitlan.
Just have your voice jump 2 octaves when you say
Tenochtitlan. Yo, who trying to pull up to Tenochtitlan?
APAH test.
What?
Our history trip to
Yo,
Tenochtitlan.
she's speaking hieroglyphics. Eagle found in the middle of the schematic diagram of the Aztec capital. Yo, do you think the Aztecs were getting sturdy? On my own.
I know we all
Absolutely. Especially this eagle found in the middle of the schematic diagram of the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan. Tenochtitlan.
Yeah, bro.
It's got a Cracker Barrel and all.
Get off my... record our own parts and just clip them together.
Yo, get off my Tenochtitlan.
You think Tenochtitlan's for real?
What?
You think they're BFFR?
Yeah, the most BFFR that there has ever been. Hack that up.
What's a dentist's favorite city? Tenochtitlan. What's the Spanish number of 8? Tenochtitlan. You know, on a scale from 1 to 10, I'm a 10 out of Tenochtitlan. Absolutely, especially this eagle found in the middle of the schematic diagram of the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan, which is divided into 4 quarters, mirroring the organization of the universe along with the alignment of the cardinal directions. I ate that up.
Oh, period. We're done.